I stared in disbelief at Richard Maxwell's cold smile, my stomach dropping as his words hung in the air. Given your recent performance issues, we're terminating your position, effective immediately. The conference room fell silent. 12 executive faces turned to me, a mixture of shock, pity, and, from a few, poorly disguised satisfaction. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the edge of the polished mahogany table. For 6 years, I'd been the director of strategic innovation at Criterion Technologies. 6 years of 80-hour weeks, missed holidays, and successful product launches. 6 years of building the company my grandfather had founded decades ago. Richard slid a manila folder across the table. Your termination package. Security will escort you out. My throat tightened as I opened it. Inside was a termination letter, dated 9 days ago. He'd planned this humiliation all along. Any questions, Ava? Richard asked, his voice dripping with mock concern. His perfectly pressed suit and practiced sympathetic expression couldn't hide the triumph in his eyes. I took a deep breath and closed the folder with steady hands. Just one, I replied, my voice quieter than intended. Did you read my grandfather's will before you decided to do this? His forehead creased slightly, but he dismissed my question with a wave. Clear your desk by noon. I've always felt you were too emotional for leadership, Richard continued, clearly enjoying his audience. A modern tech company needs decisiveness, not sentimentality. The executive team shifted uncomfortably. Most avoided eye contact, except for Diane from marketing, who shot me a look of genuine concern. Your projects consistently prioritized employee satisfaction over shareholder value, Richard said, pacing now. We need someone with genuine business acumen in your role. I noticed Marcus, my replacement, sitting at the far end, trying to suppress a smirk. The two had been college roommates, a fact conspicuously missing from Marcus's employment application. Your replacement has already been briefed, Richard added, gesturing toward Marcus. We need to move forward without delay. I gathered my belongings in silence. Every fiber in my body wanted to defend my record. The 42% revenue growth in my division, the patents I'd secured, the talent I'd recruited. But something deeper held me back. As I stood, Richard couldn't resist one final jab. Perhaps corporate leadership isn't your calling, Ava. Not everyone has what it takes. I walked out without a word, past stunned colleagues and curious stares. Because I knew something Richard didn't, something that would change everything tomorrow morning. My apartment felt unnaturally quiet as I placed my cardboard box of office belongings on the kitchen counter. A photo of my grandfather, Ava Collins, founding CEO of Criterion Technologies, smiled at me from a silver frame. You were right about Richard, I whispered to the photo. I walked to my home office and unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a sealed blue envelope, the one my grandfather's attorney had given me 5 years ago when Harold died. Open this on your 33rd birthday, he had instructed. Not a day sooner. Yesterday had been that birthday. My hands trembled as I broke the seal and unfolded the thick legal documents inside. The first page bore my grandfather's distinctive handwriting. My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, I've been gone for some time. What follows may surprise you, but I've always known your true potential, even if you didn't. I flipped through the pages, my heart racing. Legal terminology jumped out at me. Transferal of ownership, majority stakeholder, silent trust activation. By the final page, I had to sit down. Through a complex legal structure hidden from public record, my grandfather had arranged for 85% of Criterion's shares to transfer to me on my 33rd birthday. I wasn't just an ex-employee. I was the company's owner. The next morning I sat in the tastefully minimalist office of Jerome Winters, my grandfather's longtime attorney. His silver hair contrasted sharply with his modern black suit as he reviewed the trust documents. Harold set this up with meticulous care, Jerome explained, adjusting his glasses. The shares were held in a blind trust under multiple shell companies to prevent detection. As of yesterday, you own 85% of Criterion Technologies. But how is this possible? I asked. Wouldn't this show up in shareholder reports? Jerome smiled. Harold was brilliantly cautious. He structured it so the true ownership wouldn't be revealed until activation. The board believes the shares are distributed among foreign investment groups, all of which are now yours. He pulled out another folder. I've had these ownership registration forms ready for 5 years, waiting for this day. Did you know Richard would fire me? I asked. Jerome's expression darkened. Harold suspected Richard's true nature. He said Richard showed dangerous ambition without ethical guardrails. That's why he built in special protections. What protections? But turn to page 16, Jerome said, pointing to a clause highlighted in yellow. It's what Harold called the snake repellent provision. As I read it, a mixture of shock and vindication washed over me. My grandfather had thought of everything. In the event of termination without cause, I read aloud from the highlighted clause, the beneficiary may immediately exercise full executive authority without board approval. Jerome nodded. Harold called it the trigger clause. He wanted to ensure that if Richard ever moved against you, you'd have immediate recourse. So I don't need board approval to take control? Precisely, Jerome confirmed. Richard's actions yesterday triggered this provision automatically. You can walk in tomorrow as the controlling owner and CEO. I sat back, overwhelmed. Richard has no idea, does he? None whatsoever. The company's ownership structure was deliberately obscured. On paper, you were just another director he could dismiss. Jerome slid a document across the desk. Sign here and we'll file the ownership transfer immediately. By tomorrow morning, the Securities Exchange will have officially recorded your position. My pen hovered over the signature line. What would you do, Jerome? His professional demeanor cracked slightly. Off the record? Harold was like a brother to me. I watched Richard systematically dismantle Harold's vision after he took over. If it were me, he paused, choosing his words carefully, I'd remember what Harold built the company to be. I signed my name with surprising steadiness. Jerome immediately made a call. Process the Collins Trust activation. Priority level 1. That night, using my still active security credentials, I remotely accessed Criterion's financial systems. If I was going to walk in as the owner tomorrow, I needed ammunition. What I found made my blood boil. Since taking over 3 years ago, Richard had slashed the R&D budget by 68% while tripling executive compensation. The employee wellness program my grandfather created had been gutted. The education fund for staff children eliminated. I discovered a suspicious $742,000 payment labeled Strategic Leadership Consulting to a company called Maxwell Ventures. A quick search revealed Richard had formed this company 2 years ago. He was paying himself consulting fees on top of his $1.8 million salary. Even worse, the retirement fund Harold established for long-term employees had been restructured, with nearly $3.2 million diverted to operational priorities, which coincided perfectly with the executive suite renovation and the new corporate jet lease. The company's retention rate had plummeted from 94% under my grandfather to just 62%. Exit interviews cited toxic leadership and abandonment of company values as primary reasons. At 2 a.m., I compiled everything into a comprehensive report. Then I found something that made me pause. A buried HR complaint about Richard from Eliza Castor in accounting, marked resolved despite her subsequent resignation. I made a note to find Eliza tomorrow. This wasn't just about reclaiming my position anymore. This was about saving my grandfather's legacy. The board is completely in the dark, Jerome confirmed over breakfast. They've been fed carefully filtered information for years. We sat in a quiet corner of a cafe 3 blocks from Criterion's headquarters, reviewing our strategy. Richard's been systematically replacing board members loyal to your grandfather, Jerome explained. Of the original 9, only Martin Chen remains. The others are either Richard's business school connections or people who owe him favors. Will they fight back when I walk in? I asked. Jerome shook his head. They can't. With 85% ownership, you can replace the entire board if you choose. Some may resign immediately to save face. And legally? We're bulletproof. I've had outside counsel review everything. Your grandfather's documentation is impeccable. Jerome checked his watch. The SEC filing was processed at 6 a.m. It's official now. My phone buzzed with a news alert. The business press had already caught wind of the ownership change. The headline read, Mysterious Ownership Shift at Criterion Technologies. Shares jump 8%. Richard will see this any minute, I said. Jerome's eyes glinted. He'll be scrambling to understand what's happening. By the time he pieces it together, you'll already be walking through the door. I took a deep breath. I'm not just going to take back control, Jerome. I'm going to fix what he broke. Harold would expect nothing less, he replied with a satisfied smile. Before heading to Criterion, I made one crucial stop, a coffee shop in the Arts District, to meet Eliza Castor, the former accounting director who'd filed that HR complaint. Eliza was nervous, constantly checking the door as she spoke. After I raised concerns about the financial reporting, Richard called me into his office. He told me I was being unnecessarily thorough and that some details were best left uncatalogued. What details specifically? I asked. Revenue projections were inflated by including pending deals that had minimal chance of closing. R&D write-offs were being manipulated, and the worst part, they were using the employee healthcare fund as a slush fund for executive perks. She slid a flash drive across the table. I kept copies of everything. I thought about going to the SEC, but Richard made it clear my career would be over. I pocketed the drive. Why are you telling me this now? Eliza's expression hardened. Your grandfather gave me my first job out of college. He believed in me. When I saw the news about the ownership change this morning, I prayed it might be you. As she left, she paused. There's something else you should know. Richard's planning a major outsourcing move next month, laying off 40% of the development team. The presentation is on the drive. I thanked her and headed toward Criterion's glass tower, the flash drive feeling impossibly heavy in my pocket. The damage was worse than I'd imagined. I arrived at Criterion at 10:30 a.m. using my still active badge to enter through the side entrance. No one paid much attention, just another ex-employee collecting personal items, they assumed. I headed straight to Human Resources, where my friend Denise had worked for 12 years. When she saw me, her eyes widened. Ava? What are you? I cut her off gently. I need to see all HR complaints against Richard Maxwell for the past 3 years. The full files, including the ones marked resolved. She hesitated. Those are restricted. I could lose my... I own the company now, Denise, I said quietly, showing her the legal documentation on my phone. I need to see everything. Her jaw dropped, but she recovered quickly. Follow me. In a back room, she unlocked a cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. Richard insisted these be kept in physical form only, no digital copies. Inside were 27 complaints, ranging from verbal abuse to clear sexual harassment. Each marked resolved with a signature from Richard himself. No independent review, no follow-up. Most complainants were either fired or quit within 3 months, Denise whispered. There's one more thing. She hesitated, then pulled a memory card from her wallet. Security footage from the holiday party. I kept it because, well, you'll see. On my phone, the video showed Richard cornering a young developer, his hand inappropriately placed on her waist as she tried to step away. The date stamp was just 2 months ago. Her complaint disappeared completely, Denise said. She was transferred to the Singapore office the next week. I pocketed the memory card. Thank you, Denise. Now, where's the boardroom? From Denise's computer, I sent an email to the entire executive team and board of directors. Emergency leadership meeting, Boardroom A, 12 p.m. today. Attendance mandatory. Ava Collins. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages. Most expressed confusion. Richard's message was more direct. You're trespassing on company property. Security has been notified. I smiled and typed back, I suggest you check with corporate counsel before making threats. See you at noon. I needed one more ally before the confrontation. I found Thomas Gardner, the chief technology officer, in his office. He'd been my grandfather's right-hand man for decades, gradually sidelined under Richard's leadership. His bushy eyebrows shot up when I walked in. Ava? What the hell? I closed his door. I own Criterion now, Thomas. 85% of it. He stared at me, then burst into laughter. Harold, you magnificent bastard, he said to the ceiling. I knew you had something up your sleeve. I need you with me at noon, I said. Richard won't go quietly. Thomas's expression turned serious. That snake has been dismantling everything we built. The innovation pipeline is dead. Morale is at rock bottom. He stood up, straightening his rumpled shirt. Just tell me what you need. As we walked to the boardroom, employees stared and whispered. News was spreading. A few smiled cautiously at me, hope flickering in their eyes. The boardroom door loomed ahead. Inside, I could hear Richard's raised voice demanding explanations. The halls buzzed with whispers as I moved through the office. Employees stared openly, some confused, others hopeful. My phone kept vibrating with texts. Is it true? Are you back? Diane from marketing. OMG, they're saying you own the company? Sam from product. Richard is freaking out. He's been on the phone with lawyers for an hour. Anonymous. The most satisfying message came from my former assistant, Zoe. He thought you left the country. He's been telling everyone you had a breakdown and moved to Bali. His face when he saw your email, priceless. I stopped by my old office, now Marcus's, finding it empty, except for a half-unpacked box. My design awards had been removed from the shelves, replaced by his business school diploma and a signed football. On his desk sat a presentation titled, Restructuring Innovation, a Modern Approach. I flipped through it quickly, my jaw tightening at each slide. It was a plan to dismantle my entire department, outsource the development team, and pivot to acquisition rather than innovation. The final slide read, Projected cost savings, $12.3 million annually. Projected executive bonus pool increase, $4.7 million. I photographed each page, then noticed a post-it note on his calendar. Lunch with R, discuss board seat. So Richard had promised him a board position too. The corruption ran even deeper than I'd suspected. I left a single business card on his desk chair. It featured my grandfather's favorite quote, Innovation without integrity is just expensive deception. With an hour before the meeting, I slipped into Martin Chen's office. As the last remaining board member from my grandfather's era, he was my best hope for an ally in the coming confrontation. Martin looked up from his computer, his eyes widening. Ava? What's happening? Richard is in meltdown mode. I closed his door. My grandfather left me 85% of Criterion. As of this morning, I'm the majority owner. Martin removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. That explains the stock alerts. He studied me carefully. Harold always played the long game, but you should know, Richard won't surrender easily. I have evidence of financial misconduct, I said. Misappropriation of funds, falsified reports, buried HR complaints. Martin nodded grimly. I've suspected as much, but Richard stacked the audit committee with his allies. Every time I've raised concerns, I've been outvoted. He leaned forward. What's your plan? Remove Richard, restructure the board, and return to my grandfather's vision. Martin's expression was grave. I'll support you, but be prepared. Richard plays dirty when cornered. Last quarter, when I questioned the R&D budget cuts, he threatened to reveal my son's past addiction issues to the press. My disgust must have shown because Martin added, That's who you're dealing with, Ava. Then it's time the company deals with who I am. I replied, Will you stand with me in there? Martin straightened his tie. Harold gave me my start 30 years ago. It would be my honor. 30 minutes before the meeting, Jerome called with an urgent warning. Richard is making moves. He just filed emergency paperwork to create a co-CEO position. Can he do that? I asked, pacing outside the boardroom. He's trying to dilute your immediate authority. The filing names Marcus Johnson as interim co-CEO, effective immediately. It requires board approval, but he's claiming business continuity provisions. I felt a surge of anger. He's still trying to outmaneuver me. There's more, Jerome continued. He's called in a favor at First Bank to freeze the company's main accounts, claiming potential fraud. He's creating chaos to buy time. I spotted Thomas hurrying toward me, his face grim. Richard just announced a company-wide reorganization by email. He's positioning it as already approved by the board. People are panicking. I made a quick decision. Jerome, use my controlling interest to block the co-CEO filing immediately. Then contact First Bank's president. Grandfather played golf with him for 20 years. Explain the situation. Thomas raised an eyebrow, impressed. I handed him my tablet. Send this company-wide right now. The message was simple. All organizational changes are suspended pending today's leadership meeting. Remain calm and continue normal operations. Ava Collins, majority shareholder. Thomas grinned as he hit send. That should throw a wrench in his plans. My phone rang. Richard. I declined the call and texted, save it for the meeting. 12 sharp. It was 11:45 a.m. The boardroom was still empty, giving me 15 minutes of quiet before the storm. I walked the halls of Criterion one last time as just Ava, not as the owner, not as the boss, but as the person who'd grown up visiting this building with her grandfather, who'd started in the mailroom during college summers, who'd worked her way up without ever using the Collins name as leverage. The once vibrant workspace felt hollow. Innovation pods stood empty. The creative lounge had been converted to executive parking. The wall that once displayed employee achievements now featured sterile corporate platitudes. I paused at the memorial plaque for my grandfather in the main lobby. His words were etched in bronze. "We build technology to elevate humanity, not to replace it." Next to it hung Richard's new mission statement, maximum shareholder value through strategic optimization. Two employees whispered nearby, eyeing me nervously. I recognized one, Jamie from the design team. "Jamie," I called softly. "How are things really?" His eyes darted around before he answered. "Honestly, terrible. 4 resignations last week alone. They cut our healthcare options again. Nobody remembers why we used to love working here." I nodded. "I remember." Checking my watch, I added, "And after today, I hope you will too." As I turned toward the boardroom, Jamie called after me. "Is it true? Are you taking back the company?" I smiled. "Watch your email in about 45 minutes. At exactly 12 p.m., I pushed open the boardroom doors. The room fell instantly silent. Richard stood at the head of the table, mid-sentence. 8 board members sat in leather chairs, expressions ranging from confusion to open hostility. Marcus hovered uncertainly by the credenza. "This is a closed meeting," Richard snapped. "Security." A guard appeared at the door, looking uncomfortable. "It's okay, Dave," I said calmly. "I believe I'm expected." Jerome walked in behind me, followed by Thomas and Martin. Jerome placed a thick binder on the table. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Vivian Shaw, one of Richard's board appointees. "Allow me to clarify," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "As of 6:13 a.m. today, I am the registered owner of 85% of Criterion Technologies' outstanding shares." Richard's face contorted. "That's impossible. The majority shares are held by shell companies ultimately controlled by Harold Collins' estate," Jerome interrupted, sliding documents across the table. "Which, as of yesterday, Miss Collins' 33rd birthday, transferred completely to her." The room erupted in overlapping voices. Richard's face had drained of all color. "This is some kind of trick," he finally managed. "The SEC filing is complete," Jerome stated flatly. "It's public record now." I walked slowly to the head of the table where Richard stood. "You might want to take a seat, Richard. You're in my chair." Richard remained frozen, his knuckles white against the table edge. "The board won't stand for this hostile takeover," he sputtered. I smiled calmly. "This isn't a takeover, it's a revelation. My grandfather arranged everything perfectly legal." Board member James Wilson, a recent Richard appointee, leaned forward. "Even so, operational changes require board approval. We have procedures." "Actually," Jerome interjected, "with 85% ownership, Miss Collins can unilaterally make several immediate changes, including officer appointments." He distributed a legal brief to each member. "But," James began. "Furthermore," I continued, "Richard's termination of my employment yesterday triggered what my grandfather called the snake repellent clause. I now have emergency authority to restructure leadership without board vote." Richard found his voice. "This is preposterous. The board will?" "The board will what, Richard?" I asked. "Vote against the 85% shareholder? Let's be practical." I placed my hands on the table, addressing everyone. "I call for an immediate vote to remove Richard Maxwell as CEO of Criterion Technologies. All in favor?" I raised my own hand, followed quickly by Martin. Thomas, though not a board member, raised his hand in solidarity. The others sat frozen. "With my 85% voting share, the motion passes overwhelmingly," I stated. "Richard, you are relieved of your duties, effective immediately." The room fell deadly silent. Richard's face cycled through shock, rage, and finally dawning comprehension of his complete powerlessness. "You can't do this," he whispered. "I just did," I replied. "Security will escort you out, just as you arranged for me yesterday." Richard's face flushed deep red. "This is a disgrace. I built this company into what it is today." "You dismantled what my grandfather built," I corrected him. "The real disgrace is what you've done to his legacy." He turned to the board members. "Are you all going to sit there while this inexperienced girl stages a coup?" No one met his eyes. Even his staunchest allies recognized the new reality. "Dave," I called to the security guard still standing awkwardly by the door. "Please escort Mr. Maxwell to clear out his office. He has until 3 p.m. Richard glared at Dave. "Don't you dare touch me. I sign your paychecks." "Actually," I said quietly, "I do now." Dave stepped forward respectfully. "Sir, if you'll come with me?" Richard grabbed his leather portfolio, knocking over his water glass. "You'll regret this," he hissed at me. "I have friends in this industry, powerful friends." "So did my grandfather," I replied evenly. As Richard stormed toward the door, he turned back for one last shot. "You're making a catastrophic mistake. The shareholders will crucify you." I couldn't help smiling. "I am the shareholder, Richard, and I've never been more certain of anything." The door slammed behind him. In the sudden silence, I surveyed the stunned faces around the table. "Now," I said, taking the seat at the head of the table, "let's discuss the future of Criterion Technologies." By 3 p.m., I'd established an emergency audit team in the main conference room. 4 trusted employees from finance and operations sat around a table covered with laptops and spreadsheets. "Full financial transparency is our first priority," I explained. "I want every transaction over $10,000 from the past 3 years reviewed." Lisa from finance raised her hand tentatively. "Even the executive compensation packages?" "Especially those," I confirmed. "And the special project accounts Richard controlled directly." News of Richard's removal had spread like wildfire. Employees gathered in small groups, whispering cautiously. Some looked hopeful, others seemed worried about more upheaval. Jerome entered with a grim expression. 3 executive resignations just hit my desk. CFO Bradley Turner, COO Philip Reeves, and Head of Legal Sarah Winters. I nodded. "Richard's closest allies. They see the writing on the wall. Their resignation letters cite personal reasons, but they're clearly jumping ship before the audit finds anything," Jerome added. "Let them go," I said, "but freeze their stock options and pending bonuses until we complete our review." By evening, the audit team had already flagged 17 suspicious transactions, including a $1.2 million market research payment to a company owned by Richard's brother-in-law. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" I asked Thomas as we reviewed the preliminary findings. He sighed heavily. "The rot always spreads from the head, Ava. Harold knew that. It's why he trusted you to clean house." Day 2 as owner began with a company-wide email. "To the Criterion family. Yesterday marked a return to our founding principles. Change is coming. Not to diminish, but to rebuild. I'm scheduling individual meetings with every department this week. Bring your honest feedback and ideas. This is your company too. Ava Collins, CEO." My first stop was the maintenance department, where I found Miguel Sanchez cataloging equipment. 17 years here, he told me, and this is the first time a CEO has visited maintenance. "What would you change if you could?" I asked. He hesitated, then opened a worn notebook. Inside were detailed plans for energy efficiency improvements that could save thousands monthly. "I've submitted these 4 times, he said. No one ever responded. By that afternoon, Miguel was appointed head of facilities optimization with a budget to implement his ideas. I met with each department, uncovering similar stories: brilliant ideas buried by bureaucracy, dedicated employees ignored by leadership. In customer success, I found a call center team with the highest satisfaction ratings despite having their bonuses cut. In their break room hung a makeshift wall of wins with customer thank you notes. "Richard ordered us to take it down," their manager explained. "Said it was unprofessional. We just moved it in here." "Move it back out," I said, "and double its size." By day's end, I'd identified a dozen employees for immediate promotion, people who'd kept Criterion's heart beating despite everything. Thomas grinned as I shared the new org chart. "Harold would love this. Talent rising from within, just like the old days." On my 3rd day, HR Director Denise knocked on my office door. "We found something you need to see." She placed a sealed envelope on my desk. This was hidden in a restricted HR file. "It's a settlement agreement with Lucia Mendez, a former developer. She filed a sexual harassment complaint against Richard last year. The documents revealed a $175,000 payment in exchange for Lucia's silence, coupled with a veiled threat about her immigration status if she spoke out. There are 4 more like this," Denise added quietly. all sealed with NDAs and threats. My blood boiled. Contact these women, tell them the NDAs are void, we won't enforce them. Offer to make things right, however they need. Later that day, Jerome brought more disturbing news. Richard had been collecting personal information on board members, gambling debts, medical issues, family problems, using it as leverage to ensure compliance. He kept detailed files, Jerome explained, essentially blackmail material. I faced a critical decision: expose Richard's behavior publicly or handle it quietly. After careful consideration, I opted for strategic transparency. I sent the evidence of financial misdeeds to the SEC with a formal statement, while keeping the personal blackmail materials private, informing only those targeted. The business press caught wind of the SEC filing. Headlines appeared. Criterion Technologies self-reports financial irregularities under new leadership, and tech giant's dramatic shift. Collins heir takes reins, uncovers discrepancies. I wasn't interested in scandal or revenge. I wanted accountability with minimal collateral damage. By the end of my first week, the initial shock had given way to cautious optimism throughout Criterion. I gathered the entire company in the main atrium, standing on the same stairs where my grandfather had delivered his annual addresses. For years, this company lost its way, I began. Today, we return to our foundations. I announced the immediate restoration of cut benefits, full healthcare coverage, flexible work arrangements, education assistance, and paid parental leave. The R&D budget would be doubled. The offshore outsourcing plan was canceled. And 5% of quarterly profits would be distributed as employee bonuses, just as my grandfather had done. We're also instituting a new policy, I continued. Every executive, including me, will spend 1 day monthly working alongside different departments. We can't lead what we don't understand. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous roar. I spotted tears on several faces, veteran employees who remembered the company's better days. That afternoon, the internal messaging system exploded with activity. The most shared message simply read, "She's actually doing it. Criterion Rebirth." Technical lead Raj approached me hesitantly after the announcement. "I have a side project our team's been developing in off hours." Richard shut it down, but we kept working on it anyway. It was an accessibility platform that could help disabled users interact with technology more naturally, exactly the kind of meaningful innovation my grandfather had championed. "Present it Monday," I told him, with a full budget request. After 2 exhausting weeks of restructuring, I finally had a moment to properly settle into the CEO office. I'd left much of my grandfather's original furniture in place: the oak desk, the worn leather chair, the wall of books on innovation and leadership. As I organized the desk drawers, my fingers caught on something underneath the center drawer, a hidden compartment. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written in my grandfather's distinctive script. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, you've discovered not just my shares, but also my faith in you. You're sitting where I sat for 30 years, facing challenges I cannot predict but know you can overcome. They will try to change you. They will say growth requires compromise, that profit justifies method. They will call your compassion weakness and your integrity outdated. Don't believe them. I built Criterion not to be the biggest or the richest, but to be the best for our customers, our employees, and the world that uses our technology. Success without purpose is just elegant failure. When they try to erase you, show them you were never written in pencil. The company is yours now, in every sense. Make it reflect the best of who you are. With eternal pride and love, your grandfather, Harold." Tears streamed down my face as I carefully refolded the letter. In that moment, I felt his presence so strongly it took my breath away. I gently placed the letter in a frame and hung it beside my desk, a daily reminder of why I was here and what truly mattered. 3 months into my leadership, the quarterly reports were finalized. I gathered the executive team, mostly new faces alongside a few veterans, in the boardroom where I'd been fired not so long ago. "The results speak for themselves," I said, as Thomas distributed the bound reports. Employee retention had jumped from 62% to 91% in a single quarter. Application numbers for open positions had tripled. The anonymous internal satisfaction survey showed the highest scores in 7 years. And most surprisingly to some board members, our financial metrics were soaring. Without the bloated executive compensation packages and wasteful vanity projects, our operating costs had decreased by 14%. Revenue was up 18% as clients responded to our renewed focus on innovation and quality. "This doesn't make sense," muttered James Wilson, one of Richard's remaining board allies. "We were told cutting benefits and outsourcing were necessary for profitability." "You were lied to," I replied simply. "Treating people well isn't just morally right, it's good business." As the meeting concluded, my assistant handed me a message. Lucia Mendez, one of the women who'd settled harassment claims against Richard, had accepted our offer to return as engineering director. Most gratifying of all was an email from Clayton Venture Partners, a major investor who had pulled out during Richard's tenure. "We're impressed with Criterion's transformation. We'd like to discuss reinvesting, specifically in your accessibility initiatives. This is the company we always believed in." I forwarded it to the team with just 3 words: integrity pays dividends. 6 months after taking control, I called an extraordinary board meeting. The boardroom looked different now, remodeled to include a wall showcasing employee innovations rather than executive portraits. "Today, I'm proposing a structural change," I announced to the reconstituted board, now balanced with industry veterans, employee representatives, and genuine leadership experts. Martin Chen smiled knowingly. He'd been instrumental in helping rebuild our governance. "I'm creating a new position, chairperson of the board, separate from the CEO role," I explained. "This will ensure permanent checks and balances in our leadership structure." I displayed my proposal on the screen, highlighting increased transparency requirements and ethical guidelines that would be binding for all future executives. "And who do you recommend for this position?" asked Dr. Lakshmi Patel, our newest board member. "I'm nominating Martin Chen," I replied. "His institutional knowledge and proven integrity make him ideal." The vote was unanimous. As Martin accepted the position, he pulled a small wooden box from his briefcase. "Harold gave me this years ago," he said, opening it to reveal a vintage fountain pen. "He told me to keep it until Criterion returned to its true path." He handed it to me with evident emotion. "He'd be so proud, Ava." Later that afternoon, the Wall Street Journal published a feature, Criterion's Renaissance: How Ava Collins Transformed a Toxic Culture into a Thriving Enterprise. The article detailed our revitalized innovation pipeline, industry-leading benefits, and surging stock price. What they couldn't capture was the changed atmosphere in our halls, the return of laughter, collaboration, and genuine pride. 1 year to the day after my public firing, I stood in the lobby of Criterion Technologies watching the morning sunlight stream through the glass doors. The same doors I'd walked out of in humiliation 12 months ago. Today was different. Employees greeted me with warm smiles as they streamed in. The security guard who had escorted me out under Richard's orders now gave me a respectful nod and a genuine, "Good morning, Miss Collins." I made my way to the main atrium where a crowd had gathered. Today we were unveiling something special, a new installation honoring Criterion's history and future. As the cloth covering fell away, gasps and applause filled the air. The mural showed 2 figures side by side, my grandfather Harold in his prime, and me as I am now, both looking forward with the same determined expression and subtle smile. Between us were the words, "Innovation with integrity, the Collins legacy continues." Thomas stood beside me, misty-eyed. "Full circle," he whispered. I thought about everything that had transpired in 1 short year. Richard was now facing SEC charges for financial improprieties. Marcus had quietly disappeared into obscurity. Meanwhile, Criterion was thriving. Our stock had doubled. Our new accessibility platform was changing lives, and industry publications had named us Most Innovative Workplace for the first time in a decade. As I addressed the gathering, I caught sight of a framed news clipping we'd added to the lobby. "Fired and humiliated. Now she owns the company." The headline made me smile. 1 year ago, I walked out those doors with nothing but a cardboard box, I told the assembled employees. Today, I stand before you with everything that truly matters. A company with heart, a team with purpose, and a future limited only by our imagination. I paused, feeling a profound sense of completion. My grandfather always said success isn't measured by what you gain, but by what you give. Today, we recommit to that principle. We build technology not just for profit, but for people. Not just for shareholders, but for society. The applause was deafening. As it subsided, I added one final thought. In business, as in life, the most powerful force isn't ambition or cunning, it's integrity. When you stand on principle, you may not always win quickly, but you will win completely. I glanced up at the mural, at my grandfather's familiar smile, and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Richard had taken my job, but in doing so, he had given me something far greater, my purpose. I had walked in with nothing. I had left with everything.